I had never made a call to Diddy, really? I got Diddy's number, just hit him up. Yo, Diddy, what up? Never happened.
If you feel strong enough about something, then you might put a little before you say exactly what you're saying.
For nearly 3 decades, Sean Diddy Combs built a massive empire fueled by pressure, calculated power moves, and relentless influence. He controlled rooms without raising his voice, checked rivals before they became threats, and made sure everyone around him understood exactly who was in charge. Artists knew the rules: show respect, play your position, and treat the bad boy brand like it was untouchable. And for a long time it was. But there was one rapper Diddy never challenged, one artist who spent years calling him out directly, dropping lines that sounded less like jokes and more like warnings. Someone who openly threw shots, hinted at industry secrets, and still never faced retaliation. Diddy never responded, not publicly, not privately, not once. That rapper was Eminem, and there's a real reason Diddy stayed silent. Most people assumed Eminem was just trolling or being provocative, doing what he always did, pushing buttons for shock value. But the truth ran much deeper than rap beef or lyrical bravado. This wasn't about sales, charts, or money. It wasn't even about ego. It came down to something far more serious: real backing, real protection, and a level of respect you can't buy with fame or influence. Eminem moved differently. From the circles he was connected to his refusal to play industry politics, to the way he stood firm during some of the most volatile eras in hip-hop, Marshall Mathers never followed the usual rules. Add 50 Cent's loyalty into the equation, and the picture becomes even clearer. Every diss, every slick bar, every eerie reference carried intent. Nothing was random. Eminem was making one thing known: he wasn't someone to test. That's the real reason Diddy never came at him. And once you understand that, everything you thought you knew about both men starts to shift. Before breaking it all down, it's important to understand what truly separated Eminem from everyone else in the game. This was never about Grammys or chart positions. It was about something the industry almost never says out loud: real backing. The kind you can't fake, spin, or erase with public relations. Most artists who challenge a mogul like Diddy feel it almost immediately. Careers stall, radio support fades, opportunities quietly disappear. But Eminem was different. He had something money and influence couldn't touch: support from people who didn't care about red carpets, award shows, or Billboard rankings. That's where the real tension began. Eminem had connections to highly respected circles on the West Coast, including members of the Samoan community, most notably the Booyah tribe. These weren't music executives or label insiders. These were individuals known for loyalty, structure, and respect earned far outside the entertainment business. When Eminem's manager, Paul Rosenberg, connected with Monster G from the regime, it wasn't about a deal or publicity. According to Gia, there were real concerns about pressure Eminem was facing at the time. Not rumors, not gossip, but situations that needed to be addressed. That period led to the 2003 track 911 with Booyah Tribe and Be Real. But the song itself wasn't the point. The message was. Eminem wasn't standing alone. When certain people tried to make Eminem check in, that unwritten rule where artists acknowledge local authority or show respect, most celebrities would have folded. They would have paid, played along, or backed down. Eminem didn't. He stood his ground. And once it became clear that pressing Eminem meant dealing with his Samoan allies, the situation cooled fast. Word traveled quickly through Los Angeles hip-hop circles. Eminem wasn't just another artist to test. He had real backing and the confidence to stand on it. And Diddy, a man who understood power and pressure better than most, knew exactly what that meant. But the Samoan support was only part of the story. What truly revealed Eminem's mindset and sent an unmistakable message to industry power players happened during a moment that's now legendary in hip-hop. Early 2000s, the In Da Club video shoot. One of the biggest moments of that era. The set was packed, cameras were rolling, energy was high. Then everything shifted. Suge Knight showed up uninvited with a large group. According to people who were there, it wasn't friendly. It was a power move. Suge's reputation alone was enough to silence rooms. Tony Yayo later described how tense it became. Even the game confirmed it years later. This wasn't casual. It was Suge expecting everyone to fall back. Security froze. Industry executives didn't want problems. Most people backed off. But Eminem didn't. According to Tony Yayo, Eminem stood his ground and refused to be intimidated. And that moment said everything.
He had some Mexican niggas. Now, we from New York. You ain't never seen a nigga with a tattoo on his forehead. 118th Street crew. I'm like, what the f? This is when I knew Eminem was real. He's like, I don't give a f, man. This is when I knew, I'm like, damn, Eminem is a real nigga. These niggas, 50 niggas outside, what's up? And then nigga Suge just
While others backed away from a man known for pressure tactics, industry blacklisting, and outright intimidation, Eminem didn't flinch. He didn't care about the reputation attached to the name. He didn't care about the power that came with it. He stood his ground like someone who wasn't afraid of consequences. No theatrics, no posturing, no pleading, just calm, unshakable confidence. The situation ended without anything exploding, but the message landed loud and clear. Eminem wasn't someone you could scare, pressure, or push around. And the industry never forgot that moment. Suge didn't leave because Eminem backed down. He left because pushing any further meant bigger problems. At that point, it stopped being about one rapper. Escalation meant dealing with people who didn't care about industry status, legacy, or reputation. And make no mistake, Diddy was watching. He saw how Eminem handled one of the most feared figures in hip-hop without panic. No submission, no fear, just steady resolve. That moment sent a message that couldn't be ignored. This wasn't someone you could bully, control, or silence through industry tactics. Street backing and standing firm had already set Eminem apart. But what truly made Diddy hesitate came next. In the early 2000s, a powerful alliance formed when Eminem signed 50 Cent to Shady Records in 2002. This wasn't just a business decision, it was the union of two forces that balanced each other perfectly. Eminem's fearlessness combined with 50 Cent's real-world credibility. Together, they became something the industry couldn't intimidate.
Everything else happened because at that point, when you're saying that this is what's next and this is what you really believe in, who disagrees with you when you're selling 23 million records on the Marshall Mathers LP? You see what I'm saying? Everybody wants to do what you want to do at that point, and then because of his support, it got the right look, and I was able to have the largest debut in hip-hop.
50 Cent wasn't an industry plant or a lucky breakout story. He entered the game with a real reputation, having survived serious attempts on his life and still coming back stronger. He had deep roots in New York and a name built on never backing down. When he linked up with Eminem, the industry paid attention immediately. The message was clear. This wasn't a duo to test. What made that alliance especially serious for someone like Diddy wasn't just influence, it was loyalty. This wasn't a mentor relationship you could disrupt with money or pressure. 50 respected Eminem as a person, not just an artist. That kind of loyalty can't be bought, and everyone at the top understood that. The respect went both ways. Over the years, 50 made it clear he was always ready to stand up for Eminem. Anyone coming at M wasn't dealing with one person anymore. They were dealing with both of them. From public commentary to constant pressure, 50's presence worked like a shield around Eminem. From Diddy's perspective, going after Eminem would have meant instant conflict with both Eminem and 50 Cent at the same time. And that's not a simple rap back and forth. That's a collision with two of the most fearless and well-connected figures in hip-hop. They weren't just connected through music, they were backed by real credibility and unbreakable loyalty to each other. Diddy built influence through divide and pressure tactics, isolating people, cutting off support, and letting industry weight do the work. Eminem and 50 were the opposite, a solid front, no cracks, no price tag. That's what made the situation risky for Diddy. You couldn't buy them off, you couldn't scare them, and you definitely couldn't split them apart. With protection locked in and alliances firm, Eminem began doing what very few rappers ever dared to do consistently. Calling Diddy out directly, again and again, louder over time. These weren't random jabs or throwaway lines, they were calculated, strategic.
Got a beautiful wife, kids, and a gorgeous home. What would make me jump in the tub with a cordless phone? I'm straight vicious, I hit you with plates and dishes, leave you with 8 stitches. When I'm gay cause I hate, Don't be nice to me. I've had it with girls, and I'll still be mad at the world, even if it apologizes.
From the outside, it looked like classic hip-hop provocation. A gifted rapper throwing shock bars, stirring controversy, daring powerful figures to respond. But when you trace the pattern carefully, Eminem's long-running tension with Diddy starts to feel far more deliberate. The shots didn't come once or twice, they came consistently, over decades without fear of retaliation. That alone made people pause. In a culture where silence often signals strategy, Diddy's refusal to engage told its own story. It started early. In 1996, long before Eminem became a household name, he was already poking at Bad Boy's dominance. At the time, it sounded like hunger, like battle rap ambition. But with hindsight, those lines feel more like a warning shot. As Eminem's platform grew, the lyrics stopped being subtle. On major albums, he called Diddy out openly, not hiding behind metaphors or coded references. Still, there was no response. No diss track, no industry pushback, no pressure campaign. That absence was unusual. In hip-hop, calling out a mogul by name typically triggers consequences. Radio support disappears, relationships shift, opportunities quietly dry up. But none of that happened here. Eminem kept escalating album after album, and nothing came back his way. It suggested a power imbalance few wanted to acknowledge. Eminem wasn't operating within the traditional rules. By the time the Marshall Mathers LP dropped, the divide was undeniable. Eminem wasn't just mocking an image. He was undermining an aura of control. Each unanswered line chipped away at the idea that Diddy was untouchable. The silence began to feel less like restraint and more like avoidance, and industry insiders noticed. Then came 2018. Eminem's response to Machine Gun Kelly wasn't just about shutting down a challenger. Buried inside that record was a line that sent shockwaves through hip-hop. In a single bar, Eminem referenced one of the most sensitive subjects in the culture and tied it even briefly to Diddy's name. He played it off with humor, but the damage was already done. The lyrics spread instantly. Fans replayed it, commentators froze, and again there was no response. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just lyrical bravado anymore. It was a demonstration of confidence, so complete it bordered on defiance. Eminem showed he could say nearly anything publicly, on record, and face no retaliation. No lawsuits, no statements, just silence. And in hip-hop, silence can be louder than any diss. Behind the scenes, people began asking harder questions. What kind of leverage does someone have to move like that? What does he know? And why does a man who built his career on pressure tactics refuse to engage this time? The answer wasn't fame, it wasn't money, it was independence. Eminem never needed industry approval. His success wasn't tied to radio politics or mogul favors. He built an audience that followed him regardless of controversy. The usual tools of control simply didn't work. And that made him dangerous in a way the industry wasn't used to. For the first time, Diddy was facing someone he couldn't intimidate, isolate, or silence. And that realization quietly shifted the balance of power. That shift became impossible to ignore that once real-world events started lining up with the lyrics. For years, Eminem's bars had sounded exaggerated to some, uncomfortable to others. But in November 2023, the tone changed overnight. Cassie Ventura filed a lawsuit against Sean Combs, accusing him of long-term abuse, control, and manipulation behind closed doors. The allegations painted a picture far darker than the polished image the public had accepted for decades. What shocked people wasn't just the claims, it was the speed. Within 24 hours, the case was settled for a reported $20 million. No prolonged legal fight, no public denial campaign, just a fast, quiet resolution. And suddenly, Eminem's past lyrics didn't sound random anymore. Fans began revisiting old songs, replaying lines that once seemed outrageous, and hearing them differently. The hints were always there. References to control, to fear, to power used behind the scenes. Things Eminem had been alluding to long before anyone else dared speak openly. What once felt like shock value started to resemble coded warnings hiding in plain sight. The settlement didn't prove guilt, but it cracked the image. And once that image fractured, everything else followed. Still, Diddy remained silent. No public rebuttal, no attempt to challenge the narrative. And that silence deepened the unease. If the lyrics were false, why not push back? Why let speculation grow? Observers began to suspect that Eminem wasn't bluffing, that he had been saying exactly what he meant all along. Then came 2024. In July, Eminem released The Death of Slim Shady. On the track Fuel, listeners caught a wordplay moment that immediately raised eyebrows. The bars were sharp, intentional, and unsettling. Fans understood the reference instantly. What made it chilling was the timing. The song dropped months before authorities publicly moved against Diddy. Behind the scenes, investigators were reportedly building their case. Meanwhile, Eminem was already addressing themes that would soon dominate headlines. To many, it felt less like coincidence and more like foresight, as if he was signaling what was coming, without saying it outright. When federal charges were finally announced in September 2024 and Sean Combs was taken into custody, decades of scattered moments suddenly snapped into focus. What once appeared to be isolated incidents, uncomfortable lyrics, and unexplained silences now aligned into a single, uninterrupted timeline. The warnings that were ignored, the names that were never answered, the battles that never happened. All of it began to make sense at once. This was never a sudden collapse or a surprise downfall. It was a slow exposure, unfolding in plain sight for nearly 30 years. A long burn rather than an explosion. Eminem hadn't been guessing, exaggerating, or chasing controversy for attention. He had been pointing at something many people either refused to confront or were too afraid to acknowledge publicly. His lyrics weren't reckless shots fired into the dark. They were calculated signals, layered with intent, delivered by someone who understood exactly how power worked in the industry. That realization reframed everything. The diss records were no longer about ego, rivalry, or shock value. They were about immunity. Eminem knew that the usual methods of industry retaliation would not work on him. Radio blacklisting, quiet phone calls, backroom pressure, and reputation smearing had no leverage. He had already achieved what most artists never do: full independence, financial freedom, a loyal audience that didn't depend on gatekeepers, and most importantly, alliances built on loyalty rather than convenience. That freedom made him untouchable in a system built on control. Where others had careers managed through favors and fear, Eminem operated outside the machine. He didn't need approval, access, or protection from moguls. And because of that, he could say things others couldn't. He could reference uncomfortable truths without worrying about consequences. That's why the bars landed differently over time. They weren't reckless, they were confident. In the end, what stands out most isn't what Eminem said. It's what Diddy never did. He never responded, never fired back, never attempted to challenge or shut down the narrative. In a culture where dominance is proven through confrontation, that silence became impossible to ignore. Power in hip-hop is usually loud. It announces itself. It defends itself. But this silence felt strategic, careful, almost defensive. And to many observers, that restraint spoke louder than any diss track ever could. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The lyrics, the timing, the restraint on one side and the silence on the other. They all point toward the same conclusion. Eminem wasn't simply dissing another artist. He was documenting a reality he believed would eventually surface. He was leaving a trail of breadcrumbs long before the rest of the world was ready to follow them. By the time the legal system caught up, the music had already told its story. And in hindsight, those records feel less like provocations and more like warnings hidden in plain sight.